At the most prestigious university in the galaxy, alien students from 47 different worlds gathered to study advanced combat theory. But when Professor Zix announced that humans would be included in their curriculum, the entire lecture hall erupted in laughter. What happened next would change everything they thought they knew about Earth's species. Welcome to the channel. Today, we bring you the humbling tale of how galactic scholars learned to respect Earth's mightiest warriors. Galactic Defense University was home to the brightest minds from across the cosmos. Kralians with their diamond-hard exoskeletons, Viridians who could manipulate gravity with their thoughts, and Zephyrians whose electrical abilities could power entire cities. Each year, the most promising students from dozens of planets attended the university to learn about the diverse life forms across the galaxy and to master the art of intergalactic combat. But it was an unremarkable day like any other that proved to be the most significant in the history of the institution. For on this day, the renowned Professor Zix, a four-armed blue alien with glowing yellow eyes, stood before his eager students and announced, "Today, we study the combat capabilities of species from Sector 7, including humans from Earth." As soon as these words left the professor's mouth, the classroom erupted in a cacophony of snickers and whispers. The students, a mix of various alien species, were in disbelief. Did he really just say humans? A Kralik, a student with a rocky exterior and a snicker. Humans? Surely, you jest. These soft, pink creatures with no natural armor, fire control capabilities, or natural weapons have never survived in the wild. How are they even here? Avaria, another student floating slightly above her chair, added, "They can't even fly or manipulate matter at a molecular level. They must be the laughing stock of the cosmos." A Zephyrian, his form crackling with electricity, chimed in, "I heard they need tools for everything. Tools, like primitive cave dwellers." And so the alien students mocked the human species, convinced that their inclusion in the course was a joke. Little did they know that they were about to learn a lesson in humility. As the professor began speaking about human capabilities, the aliens were beyond skeptical. But as he detailed the humans' mastery of weaponry, their adaptability and sheer tenacity, something shifted in the room. Their laughter died down, replaced by a growing sense of unease. For the first time, they considered the possibility that these seemingly weak creatures might possess abilities that transcended their own. Professor Zix continued, undeterred by their earlier mockery. He spoke of the human capacity for strategic thinking, their ability to work together in large groups, and their knack for exploiting enemy weaknesses. He described how humans had not only survived, but thrived on a planet with so many natural predators, all thanks to their intelligence and determination. By the end of the lesson, a profound silence had fallen over the classroom. The students, once filled with laughter and arrogance, now sat in stunned silence. They realized that their previous judgments had been hasty and inaccurate. They had underestimated the human species, and in doing so, had exposed their own ignorance. From that day forward, the alien students approached every lesson with newfound respect. They delved deeper into the subject matter, eager to learn and uneager to be seen as ignorant. The classroom echoed with thoughtful discussions and respectful debates, a far cry from the mocking laughter that had filled it just weeks before. And so it was that a group of extraterrestrial students learned a valuable lesson about humility and the dangers of underestimating one's opponents. As they continued their studies at Galactic Defense University, they carried with them the memory of that pivotal day when they learned to respect the humans, a species they had once mocked, but which had turned out to be much more than they had expected. Do you find this story interesting? Let us know in the comments section below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing content. The mockery continued for weeks. Human combat tactics became the running joke of the university. Montage of students laughing and making jokes. Kralik, a lanky purple student with 4 arms, said, "Humans throw pointed sticks at each other. How terrifying is that? Like a baby's rattle. Next, they'll be rolling around on the ground laughing. Vera, a short, stout student with bright pink skin, chimes in, and they need metal shells around them just to travel through space. Pathetic. Professor Zix, an old, gray, furry creature with a long beard, shakes his head. That's enough. Your assignment is to research one human military engagement and present your findings to the class. Surely you can do that much. The students groan. Zif, a tall, muscular humanoid with green skin and a single red eye, stands up. This is a waste of time, Professor. What could we possibly learn from studying weaklings? I've seen more coordinated attacks from insect colonies. Professor Zix fixes him with a withering stare. You will do as I say, Zif. Now get out. As the students file out of the room, mumbling and arguing amongst themselves, the professor turns to the class, a ghost of a smile on his face. He had been teaching for 300 years across the galaxy. He had seen everything. There was nothing that he had not witnessed in all of his centuries of life. But he had seen something in human history that these students, arrogant and ignorant, had not. Something that would shatter their assumptions and force them to see humans in a new light. Something that would show them the true meaning of power. And he couldn't wait to share it with them. Professor Zix had chosen the Battle of Thermopylae for his presentation. The Spartans versus the Persians. Next week, the students return to class, each one presenting their research. First, there is Kralik. He presents his report on the Battle of Thermopylae. He focuses on Leonidas and the 300 Spartans who held off the entire Persian army. Kralik is nervous, but he does a good job. The other students listen, taking notes. Then it's Vera's turn. She goes over the Battle of Midway, focusing on the kamikaze pilots. She describes how these pilots, knowing they would die, would crash their planes into the enemy ships, taking as many soldiers with them as possible. She finishes her report with a quote from one of the kamikaze pilots. With my death, I feel I am most alive. Finally, it's Zif's turn. He presents his research on the Battle of Hastings, focusing on William the Conqueror and his knights. He talks about how the English were outnumbered 2-1, but still won the battle and changed the course of English history. He finishes his report by saying, humans are truly a formidable species. They may be small and weak, but they have a powerful will to win. They will fight to the death to defend their way of life. They are relentless, and they never give up. For the first time in a long time, Zif feels a sense of pride. Humans might be weak, but they are also brave and determined. They will not be an easy species to conquer. This is a computer lab in a military academy. 3 students are sitting at their terminals researching history. Their mission, find evidence of human weakness. But they're about to learn that humans can be incredibly resilient. Kralik chose the Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans fought against 300,000 Persians. He thought it would be an easy A. After all, the Spartans were vastly outnumbered. Surely they surrendered immediately. Kralik types furiously, but his confidence is waning. Thermopylae was a long, hard-fought battle. The Spartans didn't surrender, but they also didn't win, and their leader, King Leonidas, died in battle. Vera decided to study the Battle of Stalingrad, convinced that humans depend too much on technology. Surely, when faced with overwhelming odds, everyone would just hide behind their machines and wait for help. But as she dug through the archives, she found something different. The defenders of Stalingrad were outgunned and outmanned, yes, but they fought back with everything they had, and even when their equipment failed, they kept fighting. Vera couldn't believe what she was reading. Humans weren't surrendering or hiding. They were scavenging for parts to repair their damaged equipment and fighting tooth and nail to stay alive. Zif selected the siege of Bastogne. He was certain that when faced with such overwhelming odds, humans would flee. After all, what's the point of fighting if you don't stand a chance? But as he read through the accounts of the siege, his expression changed. The men of Bastogne were surrounded, outnumbered, and the freezing winter weather didn't help their cause. But they didn't flee. They stood their ground and fought back. The three students looked at each other, their expressions grim. They had expected to find evidence of human weakness, but they found the opposite. Humans don't give up easily. In fact, they can be incredibly resilient in the face of overwhelming odds. Kralik stood up abruptly, his eyes wide with newfound respect. "Maybe we should let them finish their research," he said quietly. The other two nodded, understanding dawning on their faces. These humans might be crazy, but they were also incredibly brave, and the last thing they wanted was for their bravery to go unrecognized. As the three students left the lab, they couldn't help but feel like they had learned something far more valuable than they had bargained for. Kralik was the first to discover something very unsettling. He had been scouring through ancient texts for any mention of the legendary 300 Spartans who held the pass at Thermopylae. The computer showed a recreation of the battle. The Spartan phalanx was holding its ground, repelling wave after wave of Persian soldiers. But then the inevitable happened. The Persians got through and killed every single Spartan. Kralik read it again. It couldn't be right. It said the 300 Spartans held the pass for 3 days. They fought until every single one was dead, even with bronze weapons against superior numbers. He had never understood the appeal of those cheesy human war movies. He'd always thought they were ridiculous. But now he was seeing them in a whole new light. He looked down at his own hand, the same hand that had effortlessly crushed a diamond the size of a fist. What was so special about these humans? They had no superpowers. They were squishy, soft-skinned weaklings. Yet they did things that made no sense, things that defied all reason. Meanwhile, Vera was also struggling with her research. She was going through old footage of the siege of Stalingrad. It was like a bad dream. The bombs, the burning buildings, the thousands of dead soldiers. Humans were eating leather to survive, she read. But they never surrendered. How is this possible? Viridians could manipulate gravity to obtain food from anywhere in their solar system. The idea of fighting while starving was beyond her comprehension. She looked down at her own full food tray. She picked up a piece of fish, then paused. She had never gone hungry before. Not once. Yet somehow these humans had managed to survive this. She moved on to other footage. Russian soldiers were knee-deep in snow, desperately trying to keep their foxholes from freezing over. Temperatures reached 40 degrees below zero. It was so cold that human skin could freeze in less than 10 minutes. But still, they held the line. Still, they refused to surrender. Just then, Zif entered the room. He had been watching the same footage, and he was having his own crisis of understanding. "Bastogne," he said, "surrounded by German forces, freezing temperatures, low ammunition." Their commanding officer said, "Nuts," when asked to surrender. Zephyrians could generate their own heat through electrical discharge. It was how they kept their desert home planet from freezing. But here, these humans were, freezing to death in foxholes. He watched as the German tanks rolled closer. The soldiers in the foxholes raised their rifles and opened fire. Zif gasped. Was that supposed to stop those tanks? Of course it would. He shook his head. He was losing his mind. These humans did the most illogical things, things that made no sense whatsoever. He looked at the date on the footage. January 1945, the war had been raging for 5 long years. And still these soldiers held the line. They didn't surrender. They didn't retreat. They fought to the bitter end. And then something amazing happened. The Germans retreated. Zif watched as the tanks turned and headed back the way they came. Had they won? No, he realized. They had lost. But in losing, they had become more human. All 3 aliens looked at the screen in silence. They had come to Earth to learn about human nature. They had expected to find a warlike race of conquerors. Instead, they found a race of survivors. Humans weren't the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. But damn, were they resilient? Vera was the first to break the silence. "I think," she said, "we have a lot to learn from these humans." She stood up and walked over to the window. The sun was setting over the horizon. It was just another day on Earth. But for these aliens from distant planets, it was a day that changed everything. The three students returned to class. Their arrogant smirks had been wiped away, replaced by confused frowns and something else. Respect. Professor Zix regarded them with a bemused smile. So you've witnessed humanity's greatest strengths, and what about their weaknesses? Kralik hesitated. Professor, I don't think humans are weak. A surprised silence fell over the classroom. Vera cleared her throat. They fight, even when fighting is hopeless. Zif added, they endure conditions that would kill most species. Indeed, Professor Zix said, his smile widening. And what else have you learned? Kralik shook his head, still frowning. I don't understand. Think, the professor prompted. The three exchanged glances. They don't just fight for themselves, Kralik finally said hesitantly. They fight for abstract concepts like honor and freedom, and for others they've never met. They call it humanity, Vera added softly, their willingness to sacrifice for strangers. Zif nodded vigorously. And they do all this without natural armor, without special powers, without any biological advantages. Professor Zix let out a low whistle. So, you've discovered why humans are studied in advanced combat theory? The classroom was silent as the professor activated a holographic display in front of him, swirling with images of human ingenuity. Is it because they're the strongest or the fastest or the most ruthless? He asked, his voice echoing in the stunned silence. When no one answered, he continued. No, class. What you've discovered is that humans turned their weaknesses into their greatest strength. They created technology because they weren't naturally armored. They developed teamwork because they were individually vulnerable. They mastered strategy because they couldn't rely on brute force. Most importantly, they never give up. Ever. As the images flashed before their eyes, the students could only stare in awe and disbelief. In the vast expanse of space, humanity pushed its boundaries, venturing to distant planets and conquering the unknown. In the depths of the ocean, humans explored the mysteries of the deep, unraveling the secrets of marine life and pushing deeper into the abyss. On land, they tamed wild beasts and roamed across continents, discovering ancient ruins and forging new civilizations. Medical breakthroughs unfolded before their eyes. Vaccines conquered deadly diseases. Robotic limbs restored movement to the paralyzed. And genetic engineering offered hope where none had been seen before. Technology shrunk the world, shrinking once isolated nations into a global community. Communications beamed voices and images across continents, connecting people like never before. Professor Zix's voice boomed through the images. In 50,000 years of human history, there's not a single recorded instance of their entire species surrendering to extinction. Even facing certain death, they fight hardest when facing certain death. The room was silent as the last image faded away. The professor deactivated the hologram and turned to his students, his eyes gleaming with pride. You are Zarpti warriors, he said, his voice echoing with power, and you are about to embark on your final test. Are you ready? Kralik, Vera, and Zip stared back at their professor, their expressions unreadable. They had come to prove the weakness of humans. But they had found something else, something far more profound. They had discovered the true meaning of strength. It wasn't about physical prowess or special abilities. It was about the indomitable spirit that resided in every human, the unwavering determination to survive, to innovate, to prevail against all odds. They had seen humans push the boundaries of exploration, conquer the unknown, and endure the face of death itself. Now they had a choice. Embrace the lessons they had learned and become part of the very thing they had come to destroy, or remain ignorant and face annihilation. Kralik stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. We're ready, Professor. A slow smile spread across the professor's face. Then let us begin. As the final test commenced, the three students knew they were not just facing an evaluation. They were confronting a transformation. Their arrogance left behind, replaced by a dawning realization of the boundless potential that lay within humanity's weakness. They had come to destroy the humans, but now they understood that in doing so, they would destroy themselves. Faced with this revelation, they had to choose between their preconceived notions and the truth they had witnessed firsthand. And in that moment of truth, their destinies, along with the fate of their species, hung in the balance. A long time ago, in a distant galaxy, there was a university where different alien species came to learn the art of combat. It was a prestigious school known throughout the cosmos as the Galactic Defense University. But the curriculum was all wrong. The teachers were terrible and the students hated it. One day, a new teacher arrived. He was a human, hailing from a small planet that was known throughout the galaxy for being, well, kind of weak. The other alien students thought it was hilarious. When they found out he was going to teach them military history, they laughed and made fun of him. The human teacher wasn't deterred. He started his class with the history of the American Revolution. He told them how despite being outnumbered and outgunned, the humans had fought against an entire empire and won. The alien students were intrigued. They had never heard of this war. As the semester went on, the human teacher shared more stories of human bravery and military genius. He told them about the Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans had held off a massive army, allowing their fellow Greeks to escape and regroup. He spoke of Joan of Arc, a young French peasant girl who led an entire nation to victory over a much larger force. He described the storming of the beaches at Normandy, where thousands of soldiers from across the world fought to take back a nation from the forces of tyranny. At first, the students took it all with a grain of salt. They assumed these stories were exaggerated or just plain wrong. A particularly skeptical group of 3 scoffed at the idea that these tiny, weak humans could accomplish anything. They challenged the human teacher after class, saying that if he couldn't prove that these feats were actually done by humans, he should be thrown out of the Galactic Defense University. The human teacher smiled. He knew just what to do. He took the 3 skeptics aside and told them a secret. He whispered something in their ears, and suddenly their eyes grew wide with amazement. He then told them, "Humans have done all of these things and more, not because they were strong or powerful, but because they refused to give up. They showed courage when others would have run away. They used strategy and teamwork to overcome bigger and stronger opponents, and they protected their friends and families no matter what the cost." The 3 skeptics were stunned. They had never thought of it that way before. If the humans had done all these things without any special abilities or powers, then maybe, just maybe, there was something to this talk about human strength. Word spread throughout the university. Students who had mocked humans now requested to take advanced courses in human military history. They wanted to learn everything they could about these tiny creatures who had accomplished so much. Months passed, and the alien students learned more about human nature. They heard stories of human explorers landing on their moon with computers less powerful than our calculators, just because they wanted to explore. They learned about human firefighters who ran into burning buildings to save strangers. They read about human soldiers who charged uphill, knowing they might not return, who were called heroes. One student, Kralik, became fascinated with something called the Medal of Honor, which is given to humans who risk their lives to save others. He learned that there were thousands of recipients of this award, all because humans had refused to give up. Then one day, 6 months later, it happened. The Galactic Defense University faced its first real crisis. An entire fleet of spaceships appeared outside the academy. Hostile aliens called the Void Empire had arrived to conquer the school and harvest its students as slaves. The alien students panicked and prepared to fight, but they were about to make one grave mistake. They forgot about the humans. As the Void Empire soldiers stormed the campus, the alien students fought bravely. But they were forgetting something very important. Their teacher had taught them well. He had shown them that strength wasn't just about physical power or natural abilities. It was about the refusal to give up, the willingness to sacrifice, and the determination to protect others. As the battle raged on, the human teacher calmly directed the chaos. He guided the frightened students, reminding them of their training, telling them to fight like humans. The alien students remembered everything they had learned from their teacher. They fought with the tenacity of the Spartans at Thermopylae, the cunning of the ancient Chinese, the strategic brilliance of the Mongol Empire, and the raw courage of the Normandy invaders. They held the line not because they were physically superior, but because they had learned the most important human trait of all, the ability to never give up. As the tide of battle turned in their favor, the human teacher watched with pride. His small, weak human race may not have had special powers or abilities, but it had something far greater, a spirit that refused to be broken, a will to survive and protect its own. In the end, the Void Empire was defeated, and the Galactic Defense University stood strong. The alien students who once mocked humans now fought alongside them, side by side, united by their common experiences and their newfound respect for the little creatures who had taught them the true meaning of strength. The human teacher, now a hero to all, knew that his mission was complete. He had shown these aliens that true strength came not from size or power, but from the indomitable spirit of humanity. The students, forever changed by their experiences, continued their studies at the Galactic Defense University, ready to face any challenge that came their way, knowing that they would never give up. That day, the students learned that being human isn't about what species you are. It's about how you choose to face impossible odds. Sometimes the greatest strength comes not from what you're born with, but from what you're willing to sacrifice for others. A powerful alien warlord had attacked the planet. The humans and the aliens fought back to back, but they were losing. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, a group of students stepped forward. They may have been unarmed, but they were fierce. They fought with the strength of 1,000 suns, taking down the warlord and his army. The final shot, a wide angle of humans and aliens working together to rebuild the city. Text on screen. True strength isn't about being invincible. It's about fighting anyway. What do you think makes humans truly strong? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more epic sci-fi tales from across the galaxy.